It all began on a quiet Monday morning when David returned from his early jog, sweat dripping down his brow and peace filling his chest. But that peace didn't last long. As he turned onto the gravel lane that had always been his, he stopped cold. Freshly painted signs now stood where his family's wooden marker once rested: Private HOA Road. Residents only. His jaw tightened, his heart sinking with disbelief. This wasn't just a road, it was the only path to his home, land passed down from his grandfather. Neighbors peeked from their porches, whispering, watching him pause under the new sign. The gravel crunched differently under his sneakers that morning, as though even the ground was warning him of the storm ahead. He knew the HOA had been relentless, always demanding fees, always controlling, but he never thought they'd be bold enough to claim his property outright. As he stood there, stunned, Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, stepped out of her SUV with a smug smile. "Road looks nice, doesn't it?" she called out, her voice dripping with false sweetness. David clenched his fists, silently vowing, "They may have taken my road, but they're about to see whose ground they're standing on." By afternoon, David's mailbox overflowed with glossy HOA newsletters declaring community improvements. Each one celebrated the road as their latest achievement, boasting about better security and access for members. The nerve of it made David's stomach twist. His grandfather had built that road stone by stone, pouring sweat into the gravel so their family would always have a path home. Now, some board thought they could erase history with paint and paperwork. That evening, while moving his truck past the sign, David caught Karen filming him with her phone. "Proof," she said loudly, "that he's trespassing on HOA property." Neighbors chuckled nervously, unsure which side to stand on. David didn't respond. He only gave a slow, calm nod, the kind of nod that unsettled even Karen. Back inside, the weight of his grandfather's framed photo stared down from the wall. His grandfather's words echoed in his mind: "Never fight fire with fire, but never let anyone take what's yours." David decided then, this wasn't going to be loud, it wasn't going to be messy. It was going to be silent, sharp, and unforgettable. The following morning, the neighborhood woke to whispers. Karen's shiny silver SUV was missing from its usual spot. No skid marks, no broken glass, just an empty driveway. She stormed around, shouting at everyone, accusing David of sabotage. But David? He simply sipped his coffee on the porch, calm as sunrise. By noon, another board member's car vanished. Then another. Each disappearance was quiet, precise, leaving nothing but confusion behind. Neighbors huddled together, murmuring fears of a thief in town. But David stayed silent, watching the panic grow. At the HOA meeting that evening, Karen slammed her fists on the table. "We're under attack," she cried, red-faced, demanding everyone pay more fees for emergency security patrols. But the irony hung heavy. The road they had stolen was now leading them into chaos. David left the room early, his lips curved in the faintest smile. He hadn't spoken a word yet, but the message was already spreading: this land still remembered who it belonged to. Within days, the missing cars became the neighborhood's obsession. Parents walked their kids to school with worried glances over their shoulders. Retirees stood on lawns, whispering theories, pointing fingers. And every time Karen passed by, her neighbor's eyes burned with suspicion. The queen was crumbling, and David hadn't even lifted a finger in public. At the grocery store, David overheard two residents. "I think the HOA messed with the wrong guy," one whispered. "That road, didn't his family build it?" The word spread like wildfire, and suddenly, people weren't so sure the HOA's version of the truth was the real one. Back at home, David carefully folded documents: land deeds, survey maps, ownership records. They weren't flashy weapons, but they were sharper than any sword. As he placed them neatly into a folder, he whispered softly, "Grandpa, we're taking our road back." The night ended with Karen pacing her porch, shouting into her phone about calling higher authorities. But even her voice sounded less confident now. Because when the ground beneath your feet doesn't belong to you, no amount of shouting can make it yours. By the fifth day, Karen's confidence shattered. She held an emergency HOA meeting in her garage, her voice trembling as she tried to keep control. "We'll tow his truck, we'll block his driveway, whatever it takes," she barked, but her neighbors exchanged uneasy glances. They were tired, drained, and secretly terrified. David, meanwhile, had quietly invited the county surveyor to visit. Under the blazing afternoon sun, the surveyor walked the property line with a measuring tape, nodding slowly, confirming what David already knew. The road, every inch of it, was on David's land. When Karen saw the county truck parked outside, her face drained of color. She rushed over, shouting questions. But the surveyor ignored her, speaking directly to David with professional respect. Neighbors gathered, watching the Queen reduced to a desperate, sputtering figure. For the first time, they saw who truly held the ground beneath their homes. That evening, David sat on his porch, the air cooler now, his papers ready for tomorrow. He knew one final move would end this charade forever. The next morning, the entire neighborhood received an invitation. David had posted notices on every door: community gathering, important announcement. Curiosity dragged them all to his lawn, where David stood calm, steady, folder in hand. With the crowd hushed, he lifted the first document. "This," he said firmly, "is the original deed, showing this road has belonged to my family for generations." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Page after page, he laid out the truth: surveys, records, legal stamps. No anger, no yelling, just facts delivered with quiet strength. Karen's face burned red as the neighbors turned their eyes on her. She tried to speak, to twist words, but the weight of the evidence silenced her. And then came the final blow. David announced that effective immediately, any HOA vehicle parked on his road without permission would be considered trespassing. Silence hung in the air before gasps and whispers filled it. The Queen had been dethroned, not with noise, but with undeniable truth. In the days that followed, the neighborhood transformed. Cars reappeared, some towed back by embarrassed board members, others quietly retrieved at dawn. Karen retreated, her once dominant voice replaced by whispers behind closed blinds. The road, once stolen, was now restored not just by law, but by respect. David and his wife walked it hand in hand one morning, the gravel crunching beneath their feet as though it remembered them. Neighbors waved with newfound gratitude, some even apologizing for standing by too long. David accepted their words with a nod, never gloating, only relieved that justice had spoken without him raising his voice. At sunset, he paused at the wooden family marker he had restored by the roadside. Touching it gently, he whispered, "We did it, Grandpa." The land was his again, not through anger, but through quiet, steady resolve, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you loved the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.